Welcome to the Scott Equipment Company Automation Simplified podcast. Get to know our people, our vendors, and our customers. Welcome to the Scott Equipment Company podcast, where you learn about our people, our vendors, and our customers. We're excited. We've got Phil Weber here today. He's one of our outside salespeople. He's worked here for about as long as I have, but I'm going to let him introduce himself. So, Phil, how long have you worked for Scott Equipment Company? What's your title? And tell us what you do.
Yeah, sure. Phil Weber, been with Scott Equipment for about 6.5 years now. Like you said, started around the time you did. Technically, outside sales / account manager / territory manager. So
Do it all.
Do a little bit of everything. Yeah, cover the greater Charlotte area, so Charlotte and about an hour and a half out in any direction. So.
Okay, and you do go down into South Carolina also.
I do. Yep, sure do.
All right. So one thing about Scott Equipment Company sales folks is that they get into a little bit of all of it, right? So it's more than just selling a product. You guys learn how to build manifolds. Sometimes you even get into programming things if you have to.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of different aspects to the job, from kind of the account management side of it, which is more on kind of the financial and quoting,
right. Yep.
Pricing, availability kind of stuff, to the technical side of actually helping spec product for certain applications, troubleshoot existing product within applications, and sometimes, like you said, even going in and rebuilding manifolds on a machine, programming stuff. I mean, it covers the gamut.
Yeah, I like to say that these guys have a plan until about 9:30 in the morning, and then your phone starts ringing, and you're like, oh, yeah, man, we'll figure that out. And you do a lot of troubleshooting and helping guys out.
Oh, yeah, about half the time you have a plan for the day that gets blown up by about 8:30, 9 o'clock. That's right? The average day, I'd say.
Yeah, everyone's day. So, well, let me ask you this. I said, can you share with us how you ended up in the industrial automation sector, and what sparked your interest in this field and led you to get to Scott Equipment Company?
Sure, yeah. Started out my career in industrial sales, so pretty much been doing that for most of my career. Coming out of college, started in the steel industry, actually. Was doing inside sales within the steel industry. Did that for about 4 years. Learned a lot, but at the end of the day, commodity sales is just not as fun. It all comes down to a lot of how many extra pennies can you get per pound.
Right.
And even starting out, kind of started in inside sales and always wanted to transition into outside sales. So eventually started looking, and a mutual friend of mine and yours passed along, knew I was looking, and passed along the job opportunity, and it looked really interesting. So interviewed and kind of went from there. Yeah,
well, we had a conversation with Brandon in the last podcast, and he actually got his job with Scott Equipment Company here by speaking to Landon. Landon found out what he did and came over. I knew John Marshall. John Marshall got me in. You knew a friend of mine. It is truly a family business here at Scott Equipment Company.
Oh, that is the truth. Everyone, there's some connection.
There's some connection.
Scott family, or you're a friend of somebody. That is, the old who you know is definitely full display here.
That's right. So, okay. Well, how about reflecting on your time with Scott Equipment Company? How have you seen the industrial automation industry change? And what's Scott Equipment Company doing to keep up with those changes?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in my 6.5, almost 7 years here, definitely seen a lot of changes. A lot more, I'd say one of them, a lot more move into robotics, and specifically collaborative robotics. When I started, it was something that was starting to you were starting to hear more about it, but not as many people really kind of delving into it,
right,
to pull the trigger yet.
Yep.
And I think once COVID happened and there was a lot of people out of work, and a lot of factories at that point still had to run, and then coming out of it, people they're still looking for help. That really drove the demand for collaborative robots, which right now is just as high as it's ever been. I mean, going exponentially higher than it was.
Right, and we talk about technology changing. The learning curve for robots has gotten a lot shorter, right? I know we've got a robot line here, Casso Robots. With the teaching pendant and the way you program, most folks can figure it out if they just take the time and start thinking about how a robot works.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I couldn't program a traditional industrial robot. That's something you have to have very specific training for.
Right.
Gone to school for specific programming kind of stuff. It wouldn't be within the average person's wheelhouse to be able to do that. But with these collaborative robots, very simple to program. I mean, everything from simple operations up to more complex ones. I mean, it's a lot easier, and it's a lot of times now the places have kind of the help in house to be able to do this themselves.
Right. And along those lines too, I mean, with all the changes with motion control, with working with Cole Morgan and the Unitronics of the world and the Simons of the world, it's getting easier to put the whole plan together through their technologies too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if we're talking more on kind of the controls, servo drive side, I mean, that definitely gets into more specialized territory where the average person, I mean, you have to have had some real training to be able to do that. I mean, that's kind of, people make careers out of that for a reason.
Right.
So that part of it's always going to be more specialized because it's just, there's a lot more complexity there. But yeah, I mean, it keeps getting simpler and simpler every day, I think, on any of that stuff.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, well, let's see. Looking to the future in industrial automation, where do you see the biggest opportunities for growth and transformation are? Do you have any ideas? And do you think Scott Equipment Company's making sure we're ready for those changes?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like in my 6.5 years here, I mean, it's always impressed me how Scott Equipment as a whole, and then as an extension, our vendors that we represent always are like staying on the cutting edge of any of the new technologies. I'd say a few of the areas really see like some growth is kind of the move away from traditional like hydraulics and pneumatics.
Right. Moving towards electrical, right? The hydraulic.
Exactly.
And the big reason is the hydraulic fluid. It's not so much the technology, it's just the hydraulic fluid is not totally environmentally friendly. And if you can eliminate leaks and stuff like that, that's why we're seeing the change. It's not that hydraulics is going away, because we've actually got a couple devices and products that actually are helping with hydraulic to make it more, well, I don't want to say it's not money, but the technology is getting smaller and more efficient. And it still has a big role out in the industrial automation industry.
Yeah, totally. I mean, hydraulics is never going away. I mean, there's just stuff you can do, you're going to do based on the physics properties. There's stuff you're never going to be able to do without hydraulics. I mean, if we're talking real high force stuff, I mean, it's hydraulics.
It's gotta be.
But like you said, it's been kind of driven in, call it kind of the lower force hydraulic realm. The move away from it, definitely, EPA, oil leaks, the maintenance involved in maintaining a hydraulic system. I was at a plant yesterday and they had these huge hydraulic power units that just oil spilling out all over it and rags just draped on the floor trying to seep it up. And I mean, it's a pain. So it's seen a lot of people trying to get away from that. Kind of started in the lumber industry. It's kind of trickled down to where we're really seeing some systems that you can kind of get away from hydraulics and potentially move into electric.
Right. So we've got the electric opportunities are growing, robotics is growing, and from our perspective, it's collaborative robots.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to say about anything industrial automation that we didn't touch on?
Yeah, and you were asking me kind of, areas where seeing some growth and changes. I think I mentioned pneumatics as well. That's another area where we're seeing a lot more move away from pneumatic into electric, which is a bit more feasible only because pneumatic, you're typically not dealing with these crazy high forces in most applications. So makes it a little bit more affordable and feasible to kind of switch to those, a ball screw driven actuator, a belt driven actuator. There's always that initial kind of upfront cost you have to take into consideration, but air is not cheap, so it's hard to explain that to people. But a compressor running at 98% is
unless you really start getting into it, doesn't make. But it's similar to hydraulics. They're not going away. They're still a big part of the industrial automation industry, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is there's always going to be pneumatics. There's always going to be hydraulics. I mean, because there's just things they're so great at, and they're efficient. But in certain kind of areas of that, there has definitely been some move to other technologies.
Right. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it all the time.
Sure.
So, well, hey, Phil, we appreciate you taking some time to come in today and join us on today's podcast. We know you're super busy. We know you're 9:30. Your day's on. I don't know what I'm going to do. But anyways, again, Phil, thanks for taking some time to join us today for today's podcast. Remember to reach out to your local Scott Equipment Company account manager if you have any questions about anything.
Give me a call if there is anything I can help with within the greater Charlotte area.
There you go. So he just said it for me. So if you have any questions in the Charlotte area, reach out to Phil Weber. He'll get anything you need and get you taken care of. Again, thanks for watching today's podcast. Be ready for the next one. Thanks.